Welcome everyone, I'm Matty the Hero, and today we're gonna talk about Team Reptile's arcade sports game, urban game about graffiti featuring sports, whatever, spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. Our story kicks off in New Amsterdam, where a prison break is currently happening. Here we find ourselves in the shoes of a blonde guy who, as we'll shortly find out, is called Foe. Foe is one of the big three of New Amsterdam, one of the city's most established writers, graffiti artists, alongside Felix and DJ Cyber. He is currently in jail, but only for a short while, as another prisoner is running enough interference for the more skilled escapees, so really this guy who saves your ass called Trice, as well as you with Trice's help, to make a run for it. But then, when everything seems all said and done, you join the Bomb Rush crew and are about to be free to go and vandalize some walls in the name of going all city. Fall loses his head.
If you wish to avoid spoilers, skip to the timestamp shown on screen.
We wake up later with the same body, but something's different. After a little catch up with Trice and an introduction to our third team member Belle, we're off to get our groove and alongside it, our head back as well. If we want to get ourselves back in order, we have to go all city with the Bomb Rush crew, which seems to be entwined with the reasons we've had to get groomed up. Throughout the game, there's a sense that you're being left out of the bigger picture, a sense that something is amiss in your ranks, which is, I imagine on purpose, as one of the major plot points is the presence of a rat in the scene, but it can be a bit too heavy-handed with how this affects characterization even amidst the Bomb Rush crew. Well, she's barely a character, bless her heart. Past what is effectively the game's real prologue, she does little more than reinforce the way she was introduced, comment on a character we revisit, and get you past the gender requirement for a boss. Trice, while not being much better himself, is at least the first or second most interactive with the world around you, but then this too also feeds into my earlier complaint. In the first chapter, you go up against the Franks, a crew of motley body parts assembled and, as far as I can tell, animated by the Flesh Prince. You go and start beef with him and his gang as your first step to go all city. But then once you're done, it turns out this was but a reason to get you to meet him, as he, being the person who makes sure your body won't shrivel away and die by affixing the metal contraption in your head's stead, wanted to schedule a checkup to make sure your body is adjusting to its new head. Perfectly reasonable, right? Right. But then why did Trice keep this a secret instead of just telling us to go to the Flesh Prince for a checkup, and then taking the first step towards going all city? Sure, it was more efficient time-wise this way, but he's either being a dick to us by withholding information that wouldn't particularly affect anything negatively in reaching his goal, or he's being a dick to the Flesh Prince by telling him we're swinging by for the checkup only to then have him get beat up by DJ Cyber for his insolence. The rest of the bosses themselves aren't particularly all that interesting in their relation to the main plot and its various threads. They're mostly there to develop things like what the police are currently doing, which can be easily summarized as needlessly escalating conflicts to a ridiculous degree, which is pretty realistic when you think about it. As for where the game is headed plot-wise though, the major plot line of course continues being finding Foe's head, but later it is elaborated upon so that we also find out what happened to the big three. The most prevalent minor plotline to accompany this is introduced as the first chapter's conclusion and is about Red's identity. Is he Foe? No, it honestly becomes obvious fairly early on that Foe ain't the character we're playing anymore, although your mileage may vary on what you consider early. Is he a different guy? Well, by process of elimination, yeah, he has to be, but who? Well, that's where the game and I disagree on the direction it took. You see, a recurring question the game tackles in regards to Red's identity is nature versus nurture. Nature here being who or what you're born as, the hand you're dealt as the game puts it, and being represented by, well, regular as people and the aura of being real. Meanwhile, nurture in the game would be the various technological advancements the setting allows for, the Cyberhead's existence, the jetpacks, and as showcased using the Cyberhead crew you fight, being more machine than man. Now, to explain my problems with this getup in enough detail, I will have to spoil not one but two major twists in the game's story, so while I'm aware that I have already given a spoiler warning earlier, I shall once again ask you to skip to the timestamp shown on screen if you wish to not be spoiled on the late game twists. But that being said, the themes of this kind of fail on multiple levels once the game finally confirms that Red is in fact an amnesiac Felix, and not a real Cyberhead. Now, I'm not saying that they would have had to change this, the teams still could have worked out in some manner had they been executed better. It still wouldn't have been to my taste, but I'm capable of separating my dislike of certain plot developments and the quality of their execution. The major fault with the team's execution, in my opinion, is actually fairly simple, all things considered. The game spends the closing stretch of each chapter building up to this reveal, yet once we get to it, and Felix, or rather Red Felix, as they're referred to at this point, is straight up asked how he will deal with having been both Red and Felix, there is nothing. You do a platforming challenge as you have during the previous chapter's ends, but there is no reckoning in his character. Before the cutscene leading into the platforming challenge, he is Red, then once it's done, he is Felix. There's no intermediary stage where a true Red Felix exists. It's just a simple switching of characters. Even this could function, however, would this not occur on the final boss's doorstep. But for all intents and purposes, despite how little Red himself was developed as a character, it felt as though the game took the character I came to know during the runtime, killed it, and is now telling me to pretend this other guy I know practically nothing about, that's his lore, is gonna be just as cathartic beating the final bosses. And that's probably because, functionally, the game has done just that. The reveal of Red having been Felix all along does not come alone. We are met with a sequence that results in first the idea of the guy we've been playing as thus far ceasing to exist, then Fall takes care of his body to make sure Felix can be made whole again and for all traces of Red to be wiped from the player character. The ending sequence is pretty cool. The game certainly has a knack for aesthetics, which I will touch upon further once we get to presentation, not to mention the 1001 more interesting ways this could have gone. The final dream sequence could have had a showdown with Red, amicable or not, to show a struggle within Red Felix to solidify just who he is, be it using the area tagging or score attack methods used in securing burrows, as a standalone boss fight, which I think would have been the cheapest, in feel and effect not effort or budget, way to go about it, or as I would have preferred it, a race to the final tagging spot. But even more so, I would have liked if the choice was not so black and white, but shaded in grades. What if instead of the main character choosing between being Red or Felix, we actually saw an amalgam emerge that acknowledges both lives it's led, and ends up using strengths and masters both of them to come out victorious against the final boss. On to brighter pastures, however, what little we see of the Bomb Rush crew's interaction within themselves are certainly a highlight, and the relationships amidst the gangs are explored as well. During the game's events, Bomb Rush gains 2 new members in Vinyl and Solace, and while the former is steadily a bit more style than substance when it comes to her contributions, Nye immediately being reduced to a damsel in distress, the latter works well as the sole linchpin really tying Felix and Red together, albeit not by choice in Red's case. I found Solace to be a very fun character to have around, but not in a vacuum. What elevates him are the reactions of the rest of the crew. Solace would not be nearly as tolerable, let alone as amusing of a character, would the game not draw attention to the contrasting opinions on him betwixt Trice and Belle, and Solace being the dictionary definition of a boy failure only adds to this. But also, special shout out to Trice for being a homie when Ren gets hit with the commonly occurring blunt force trauma of being shot with a sniper rifle point blank, and immediately looking for the Flesh Prince. And also let's extend the shout out to the Flesh Prince for saying fuck that gang war bullshit upon hearing our Trice and going to the rescue. As for gameplay, we're looking at a mixture of Jet Set Radio and the Tony Hawk series. The overall vibe is akin to Jet Set, but the game has a more arcadey feel, mainly thanks to the characters being less heavy and overall more responsive in turning and the like. Doing graffiti is just as important in this game, and the systems are even fairly similar, though Bomb Rush Cyberfunk offers a wider variety of motions than Quarter, Parallel Full Circles. On top of this, you have a trick system heavily inspired by Donkey Kong himself, albeit simplified. You don't have any sort of motion inputs on your trick buttons, rather you press one of the 3 phase buttons to do a trick, or the right trigger as well as a phase button to do a special trick such as a dark slide for a bit of meter. Otherwise, the basic structure of doing combos is the same. You do trick stuff of an alley, grind and manual to tie these together when applicable. But along these, you also have to keep in mind Bomb Rush Cyberfunk's addition to these bases, a jetpack. The pecs function as double jumps for the most part, as while they also have the option of giving you a big boost for meter, I struggled to find use for it best looking for secrets. The double jumps are, as you'd imagine, quite useful in regular traversal, but also function as a combo tool to ensure your manual doesn't run out of time and does break the combo. Another one of BRC's additions to both formulas, however, is the ability to switch styles. The game allows you to choose between skateboarding, rollerblading, and BMXing as your weapon of choice, as well as giving on-foot its own set of tricks, making it so you have 4 movesets to choose from. Albeit, they share various elements amongst each other, and there is the caveat that while skateboard and BMX can do manuals, rollerblades and your feet cannot. To make up for this, they can instead slide to buffer their combos, but it is a less effective way to do so in comparison due to its shorter length. And if you're tired of looking at Red's aluminum mug, you can also always bust a move and choose to switch characters once the option has been unlocked. But if you don't want to switch, there's also the option of changing your threads, which also allows you to shake off the 5-0. Speaking of which, just as it was in Jet Set, the pigs have a considerable presence on the levels. Although instead of being what is effectively a moving zone of obstacles which might shoot you, it works off of a GTA-like wanted level system where you build up to that level and more. Aiding you in thwarting law enforcement is the game's combat system, which is yet another addition. The combat system isn't terribly deep, but it gets the job done and is definitely a welcome addition to the game. In it, you use the regular trick controls to pull off roundhouse kicks, sweeps, and the like to harm a copper or two, which you can also jump cancel the recovery of to convert any ground attack into a launcher. Once in the air, you can choose to continue your barrage with any of the air attacks done the same way as the ground ones, or to spray the cops to deal emotional damage as well as physical, taking them out of commission faster. You can also choose to spray people on the ground, momentarily stunning them. The police start off going after you with nary more than their fists at first, but resist arrest by punching them in the face or just simply ignoring them, and you will soon find out that they've got more up their sleeves. Soon, they bring out the automated turrets that shoot chains to restrict you with. Insert your personalized political commentary here. Then up the ante further. Riot gear, snipers, choppers. Fuck it, why not? Says the PD. Honestly, none of these are particularly bothersome until the New Amsterdam police start outsourcing their work to America, at which point the police can actually become imposing. To become All City King, you have to conquer all 5 boroughs of New Amsterdam, as previously mentioned, and you do this by following a pretty linear story all things considered, but more importantly from a gameplay standpoint, being given various levels to sandbox your way through, tagging up the place to earn a reputation to challenge the gang currently running it. Once you have enough rep, you do a gang battle which involves a lot less shooting and a lot more extreme sports than the name would imply, as your squabbles are watched over by the Old Heads, a gang that's out of the graffiti game and is mostly present to make sure the rules of the streets are enforced, which apparently involves officiating these gang battles, which themselves are 2-minute exhibitions where each gang has to rack up as much score as they can in the borough you're fighting for, and the one with the higher score wins. But in these boroughs you will also find various knickknacks to be on the lookout for. The post office's mascot is dotted all over the city, and if you can high-five all of the same colored ones in one combo, they will open up the post boxes, which will either serve as fast travel between parts of the map, or send you to the warehouse where you might find additional goodies, although I did get sent there once or twice while it was empty, so hell if I know. You may also find additional outfits for the characters along certain lines, though these are just more color palettes for the characters' existing outfits. You can also find additional mixtapes if you're tired of the level's current soundtrack, but we'll come back to this. As the final point here, we really ought to touch on the one major gameplay mechanic which I hadn't even mentioned, the phone. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk opts to follow Jet Set's footsteps once again in only having minimal HUD, the only HUD on screen being your meter and your health, but even the latter is only present if you've been hit. Instead, the HUD and various other menu elements such as the graffiti gallery, the tape selector and hints are all more or less diegetically integrated through Red's phone. Now, obviously, the game has a late 90s, early 2000s retro futurism vibe going on overall, but if you can find me a phone from 2005 or earlier with a GPS that had real-time updates and was more accurate than guessing which city you're in, I will be shocked. My incessant nitpicking about this minor technological impossibility in this game where you play as a robot man piloting a dead guy's body to do kickflips with a jetpack aside, the phone offers an elegant solution to having quicker access to certain options. Technically, it does feel a bit janky, but it is vibe-accurate jank. It's just janky enough to really sell that you're getting at and looking at a flip phone for directions while grinding at 80 miles an hour. Not more, not less. And before you ask, yes, Red does have games on his phone. An important part of the game is its aesthetics. While the game does not shy away from showcasing its influences in general, nothing makes the ties to Jet Set more apparent than the presentation, and that is but for one reason. They nailed it! The technological anachronisms notwithstanding, you could put any character from Bomb Rush into Jet Set and honestly, only Solace would make it obvious something fishy is going on. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk opts for lower poly models to evoke the Dreamcast style and follows the same influences in its style like the youth culture of the time, Harajuku street fashion, and Y2K era futurism. These influences can be seen most anywhere, from the character design to the environments to even the menus, despite how few and far they are and minimalist in approach they tend to be. The soundtrack also takes after Jet Set's, being mostly comprised of electro, funk and other various electronic subgenres, and even including a couple compositions by Hideki Naganuma. Each of the game's stages feature a 3-track mixtape, mixed in universe by DJ Cyber. While the songs themselves are by no means short, you will hear repetitions before you finish a level, which can start wearing them out sadly. As stated previously, you can also unlock additional mixtapes, but these two are usually just the mixtapes of other stages, which you can then choose to add to the circulation. It needs to be said that despite how the game may feel, this is still an indie game and the soundtrack is sadly where it shows the most. Thankfully they decided to go for a quality over quantity approach, meaning that what is here is at least good, but the soundtrack can leave you wanting more, especially if you get stuck in a level listening to the same 3 songs. On the other hand though, what is here is put to good use. Parts of the soundtrack don't just appear in the levels but also as background music in certain story scenes, where they're largely used well. So overall, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is a very well made stand-up to the stylings and culture of yesteryear, perhaps even good enough to ask ourselves what exactly changed and why. It offers a great blend of the Jet Set and early Tony Hawk series, the characters are likable, and the story, while I may disagree with its direction, and is not the game's focal point, is still good and engaging enough to see through. And now that that's all said, if you'll excuse me, I have to go follow a fish.